The clock ticked loudly in the small room. The table was set. The food was hot. The candles burned low. I sat and waited for him. My hands were on my lap. My eyes stayed on the door. At last, I heard the key turn. The door opened. Daniel walked in. His shoulders were bent. His face was tired. He did not smile. He did not look at me. He put his bag down and took off his shoes slowly. I stood and said, "I cooked for you." He looked at the table. He said in a low voice, "I ate already." Then he walked past me and sat on the couch. He picked up his phone. His face lit with the screen, not with me. The food stayed untouched on the table. I sat again. My chest felt heavy. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. The silence filled the room. It was stronger than fire. I remembered a different time. A time when he would smile at the door. A time when he hugged me before even putting down his bag. A time when his eyes looked for mine. First, that time felt far away now. I rose from the table and put the plates away. The food went cold in the sink. Daniel stayed on the couch. He scrolled on his phone. He did not ask about my day. He did not see my face. At night, we went to bed. The lights turned off. The room was dark. I lay on one side. He lay on the other. His back was to me. His breaths were slow. My eyes were open. I listened to the silence. It was louder than any voice. I turned to face the wall. The sheet between us felt like a wall. Two, I whispered his name in my head, but not with my lips. My heart beat fast, but no words came out. The next day I cleaned the house. I washed clothes. I made lunch. When he came home, he ate quickly. He said little, only the food is fine. Then he went to his phone again. I wanted to ask, "Do you love me still?" But fear held me back. I feared he would not answer. I feared his answer would be no, so I stayed quiet. On Sunday I tried. Again, I said, "Daniel, let us go for a walk." The sun was warm. The street was calm. He said, "Yes." We walked side by side. Our steps were slow. The trees moved in the wind, but no words passed between us. I asked about his work. He said busy. I asked if he slept well. He said, "Fine." Then he was silent. His eyes looked ahead. I looked at the ground. We were close in body, but far in heart. That night I sat with a book in my hands. I did not read. I only watched him. He sat with the television on. The light from the screen touched his face. His eyes did not turn to me. His lips did not move. I wanted to go and sit by him. I wanted to touch his hand, but fear stopped me. I thought, what if he pulls away? What if he does not care? So I stayed in my chair. At work, my friends spoke about their families. Some laughed about small fights. Some shared about love and care. I only smiled. I said we are fine, but inside I was breaking. That night I tried to speak again. At dinner I asked, "Do you feel we are far now?" His fork stopped for a second. He looked at me. I saw his eyes, but only for a short moment. He said, "I am tired, Clara." Then he ate again. I waited for more words. None came. I pushed my food around the plate. My throat felt dry. My chest felt tight. I wanted to ask again, but I stayed quiet. After that night, I never asked again. Days passed, then weeks. The silence did not leave. It grew stronger. It walked with us in the house. It sat with us at the table. It lay with us in bed. It followed me like a shadow. I began to feel invisible. If I smiled, he did not see. If I wore a new dress, he did not look. If I cooked something special, he ate without a word. It was like I had faded. In front of his eyes, at times I thought maybe this is normal. Maybe all couples grow quiet after years. But another voice in me said, no, this is not normal. Love should have words. Love should have warmth. I tried small things. I made his favorite soup. I bought a shirt for him. I waited to see his face light up, but his face stayed the same. His lips gave no praise. His eyes gave no spark. I started to lose myself. I spoke less at work. I laughed less with friends. The silence at home became the silence inside me. I felt like a ghost walking through my own days. Sometimes late at night, I thought of leaving. But where would I go? What would I say? He had not hurt me with hands. He had not betrayed me with lies. He had only left me with silence, and that silence was killing me slowly. One night, I sat at the edge of the bed. He was asleep. His breath was calm. I looked at his face. I remembered the man who once held me close. I remembered the voice that once whispered love. I touched my chest and felt the emptiness inside. The silence was not only between us now, it was inside me. It was changing me. I feared that soon even I would forget how to speak. Before I continue my story, please subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now, let's continue. The days grew longer. The silence grew stronger. Every evening felt the same. I cooked. He ate. He stayed with his phone. I stayed with my thoughts. One night, I placed a plate in front of him. I waited for him to say something. He only said, "Thank you." His eyes stayed on the food, not on me. I sat across from him and watched. He ate fast. Then he stood and left the table. I was still eating, but he did not wait. For me, I carried the plates to the sink. My hands worked with the dishes. But my mind felt empty. Was this still love? Or was it only two people living in one house? On weekends, he sometimes went out. He said he had things to do. I asked if I could come. He said, "No, it is nothing." He walked out the door, leaving me behind. I sat by the window and watched people walking outside together. Some couples laughed, some held hands. My own hand felt cold. At night I lay in bed. My body was near his, but my heart was far. I waited for him to touch me, to say something soft, but he turned his back, closed his eyes, and went asleep. I turned too, my eyes wide open. I listened to the quiet. One morning I made coffee for him. I placed the cup near his hand. He said nothing. He drank it quickly, left the cup and walked out the door. I looked at the empty cup. The silence sat with me again. At work people asked, "How are you?" "Clara," I smiled and said, "I am fine." But my smile was not real. No one knew the truth. No one saw the silence I carried home each night. One evening I tried again. I said, "Daniel, can we talk?" He looked up for a second. I thought he would open, but he said, "I am busy." He turned back to his phone. My voice stopped in my throat. I went to the bathroom. I looked at my face in the mirror. My eyes were tired. My lips were dry. I touched my cheek and asked myself, who am I now? I was not the girl I used to be. I was not the woman I wanted to be. I started to speak less to. I stopped asking him questions. I stopped trying to make him laugh. I sat in silence just like him. It felt easier, but it also felt like dying. One night I saw him sitting on the couch. His shoulders were bent, his face was serious. I wanted to sit beside him. I wanted to say, "Do you remember our first kiss? Do you remember our first night? Do you remember me?" But I stayed in my chair. The words stayed in my mouth. The house was quiet. The clock ticked. The television spoke, but not us. I realized silence was not only around us. It was between us like a wall. A wall I could not break. One Sunday, he went out again. I stayed home alone. The house was too quiet. I walked from room to room. Each room was filled with memories. The table where we once laughed. The bed where we once whispered. The kitchen where we once cooked together. Now each place was empty. I sat on the floor of the bedroom. My eyes filled with tears. I wanted him to see me. To hold me, to say one simple word. "I love you," but no word came. Only the sound of my tears. Later that night he came home. I wiped my face. Quickly, I smiled like nothing was wrong. He asked nothing. He saw nothing. He walked past me as if I were air. I thought maybe he was unhappy with me. Maybe I was not enough. Maybe he wanted another life, but he never said. His lips were locked. His heart was locked too. One day my friend Sarah asked me to join her for lunch. I went. We sat in a small cafe. She asked, "Clara, are you happy?" My spoon shook in my hand. I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to say, "I live with silence every day." But instead I said, "I am fine." She looked at me with soft eyes. She knew I was not fine, but she did not push me. That night when I lay in bed, I thought about Sarah's question. Was I happy? No, I was not. I was lonely. I was unseen. I was unheard. My heart screamed, but no one listened. One evening the power went out. The house was dark. I lit a candle. The room glowed soft. Daniel sat on the couch with me. For a moment, I felt hope. Maybe in the dark, without phone, without television, we would talk, but he stayed quiet. He looked at the candle flame. His face was calm but far. My hope died. The silence felt heavier than ever. I could not carry it anymore. My chest hurt. My head hurt. My soul hurt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to shout, "Talk to me." But I did not. I sat with the flame and my pain. The days after that were worse. I stopped waiting for him to speak. I stopped waiting for him to see me. I moved like a shadow through the house. I cooked, I cleaned, I slept. But I was not alive. One night I dreamed I was standing in a big room. Daniel was there. I called his name again and again. But he did not turn. He only stood far away, looking at nothing. When I woke, my pillow was wet with tears. I began to fear the silence would never end. That one day I would forget his voice. That one day I would forget my own voice, too. The silence hurt more than anger. It hurt more than lies. It hurt more than anything. It was slow, but it was killing our love, and I was powerless to stop it. Silence lived with us like a third person. It sat between us at the table. It lay between us in bed. It followed us from room to room. Every day it grew taller, like a wall made of glass. We could see each other, but we could not touch. I woke up early each morning. I made breakfast. Daniel sat down and ate in silence. Sometimes he read the news on his phone. Sometimes he just stared at the table. I wanted to ask, "Are you happy with me?" But my lips stayed closed. One evening, I sat at the table waiting for him. The food was ready. My heart was ready too. When he came home, I said, "Can we eat?" "Together," he said. "I am not hungry." He went straight to the couch. I sat at the table alone. I looked at the food and it felt like I was looking at my own heart, cold and untouched. The days passed, but the silence stayed. I began to feel tired all the time. My body was heavy. My eyes were always wet. I laughed less. I smiled less. Even my voice sounded weak when I spoke to others. At work, Sarah asked me again, "Clara, are you sure you are fine?" I looked at her and wanted to cry, but I said, "Yes, I am fine." She looked at me with soft eyes, but she said nothing more. That night, I lay in bed beside Daniel. He turned his back as always. I stared at the ceiling. My lips moved, but no sound came out. I wanted to say, "I miss you. I love you, please speak to me." But the silence was stronger. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror. I did not know the woman looking back at me. My eyes were dark, my skin was pale. My smile was gone. I whispered, "Who are you?" But even my own reflection gave me no answer. The silence was changing me. I was not the same Clara anymore. I was smaller, I was weaker. I was alone, even with someone beside me. Then one day, something broke inside me. It was a Saturday. I cooked lunch and placed it on the table. Daniel came home and said, "I ate." Already, he walked away. I stood still holding the plate in my hands. I felt my body shake, my chest burned. My eyes filled with tears. I put the plate down and followed him. He sat on the couch looking at his phone. I stood in front of him. My voice shook, but I spoke. "Daniel, please talk to me. Do you see me? Do you love me?" He looked up surprised. His eyes were cold. He said, "Clara, I am tired." That was all. Then he turned his eyes back to the phone. My knees felt weak. I sat on the floor. My tears fell fast. I said, "You do not hear me. You do not see me. You live with me. But I feel like I am alone." For the first time, Daniel put his phone down. He looked at me. His face was serious. He said, "What do you want me to say?" I stared at him, broken. I said, "I want you to say anything. I want you to look at me. I want to know I still matter to you." His lips moved, but then he stopped. No word came. He picked up his phone again. The silence returned. That night I could not sleep. I turned from side to side. I heard his breath beside me, but it gave me no peace. I thought about leaving. I thought about packing a bag and walking out, but where would I go? What would I say to others? I was ashamed of my empty marriage. Days turned into weeks. Nothing changed. The silence grew even stronger. I began to write small notes to myself. Not to him, only for me, notes like, "You must stay strong, you must remember who you are." I hid them in my drawer. They were my secret voice. One evening, I sat outside the house. The air was cool. The sky was dark. I looked at the stars and asked myself, is this my life? Will it always be this way? I wanted someone to answer me, but only. The wind blew. Inside the house, Daniel sat as always. His eyes on the screen, his lips closed. His silence filled the room. I looked at him one last time. My heart broke again. The next morning, I made a choice. I woke up early. I packed a small bag. I put in some clothes, my wallet, and the notes I wrote to myself. I looked around the room one last time. The bed, the table, the chair where I sat alone. The silence lived in every corner. Daniel Kamna was still asleep. I stood at the hall door and looked at him. For a moment, I waited. I wanted him to wake up and call my name. I wanted him to stop me, but he slept. He did not move. I walked out the door. My feet were heavy, but they moved. The air outside felt new. The silence was still with me, but it was different. It was not his silence. It was mine now. I went to Sarah's house. She opened the door and saw my face. She pulled me inside and held me. I cried in her arms. I said I could not live like that anymore. She whispered, "You are safe now." For the first time in months, I felt heard. My tears fell. But they were not only from pain, they were also from release. I stayed with Sarah for a few days. She gave me her room. She cooked for me. She spoke to me. She listened to me. I remembered what it felt like to be seen, to be cared for. Daniel did not call. He did not send a message. Days passed, and there was nothing from him. The silence between us had grown so strong that it now reached across distance too. At first I felt broken. I thought maybe he does not care at all. Maybe I was nothing to him. But slowly, with Sarah's help, I began to see the truth. The silence was not my fault. The silence was his choice, too. I started to take walks in the park. I breathed the fresh air. I watched children play. I listened to birds sing. Their sounds reminded me that the world still had voices, even if my marriage had none. I sat on a bench one afternoon and thought about my life. I asked myself, Clara, do you want to return to that house? Do you want to live in silence forever? My heart gave me the answer. No, I wanted more. I wanted life. I wanted words. I wanted love that spoke. That evening I told Sarah, I will not go back. She held my hand and said, "You are brave." Weeks turned into months. I found a small place to live. It was not big, but it was mine. The walls were empty, but they did not feel heavy. They did not carry silence like before. They waited for my voice. Sometimes I sat alone at the table and ate, but it was different now. I was not waiting for someone who would not speak. I was feeding myself with peace. One day, Daniel sent a short message. He wrote, "Are you coming back?" My hand shook as I read it. I thought for a long time. Then I wrote back, "No, I cannot live in silence anymore." He never replied. That was the end, a silence again. But this time I chose it. It was not a silence that killed me. It was a silence that freed me. Now when I wake up, I look at the sun. Through my window, I make my own coffee. I play soft music. The house is quiet, but it is not empty. It holds my voice, my steps, my life. I learned something important. Silence can destroy love when it grows between two people, but silence can also heal when it belongs to one heart. I chose the second silence, and in it I found myself again. We all go through hard times, but stories like this can help us feel seen. Thank you for watching, and come back for more real moments.